Meanwhile, within the room, the princess mother clung to Clementina. The terror which her sharp cry had expressed was visible in her strained and startled face. Her eyes, bright with terror, stared at the drawn curtain. She could not avert them, she still must gaze, fascinated by her fears, and her dry, whispering lips were tremulous. "Heaven have mercy," she whispered, "shut the window." Shut it fast, and as Clementina moved in surprise, she clung the closer to her daughter. "No, do not leave me. Come away. Jesu. Here are we alone, two women." "Mother," said Clementina, soothing her and gently stroking her hair, as though she in truth was the mother and the mother her daughter, "there's no cause for fear." "No cause for fear. I saw him, the sentry, he is climbing up." "Ah!" and again her voice rose to a cry as Wogan's foot grated on the window ledge. "Hush, mother. A cry will ruin us." "It's not the sentinel," said Clementina. Page 179. Clementina was laughing, and by her laughter the princess mother was in some measure reassured. "Who is it, then?" she asked. "Can you not guess?" said Clementina, incredulously. "It is so evident. Yet I would not have you guess. It is my secret, my discovery. I'll tell you." She heard a man behind the curtain spring lightly from the window to the floor. She raised her voice that he might know she had divined him. "Your sentinel is the one man who has the right to rescue me. Your sentinel's the king." At that moment Wogan pushed aside the curtain. "No, your highness," said he, "but the king's servant." The princess mother dropped into a chair and looked at her visitor with despair. It was not the sentinel, to be sure, but, on the other hand, it was Mr. Wogan, whom she knew for a very insistent man with a great liking for his own way. She drew little comfort from Mr. Wogan's coming. It seemed, too, that he was not very welcome to Clementina, for she drew back a step and in a voice which dropped and had a tremble of disappointment, "Mr. Wogan," she said, "the king is well served," and she stood there without so much as offering him her hand. Wogan had not counted on so cold a greeting, but he understood the reason, and was not sure but what he approved of it. After all, she had encountered perils on the king's account, she had some sort of a justification to believe the king, page 180, would do the like for her. It had not occurred to him or indeed to anyone before, but now that he saw the chosen woman so plainly wounded, he felt a trifle hot against his king for having disappointed her. He set his wits to work to dispel the disappointment. "Your Highness, the truth is there are great matters brewing in Spain. His Majesty was needed there most urgently. He had to decide between Innsbruck and Cadiz, and it seemed that he would honor your great confidence in him and at the same time serve you best." Clementina would not allow him to complete the sentence. Her cheek flushed, and she said quickly, "You are right, Mr. Wogan. The king is right. Mine was a girl's thought. I am ashamed of it," and she frankly gave him her hand. Wogan was fairly well pleased with his apology for his king. It was not quite the truth, no doubt, but it had spared Clementina a trifle of humiliation, and had re-established the king in her thoughts. He bent over her hand and would have kissed it, but she stopped him. "No," said she, "an honest handclasp, if you please, for no woman can have ever lived who had a truer friend," and Wogan, looking into her frank eyes, was not, after all, nearly so well pleased with the untruth he had told her. She was an uncomfortable woman to go about with shifts and contrivances. Her open face, with its broad forehead and, page 181, the clear, steady eyes of darkest blue, claimed truth as a prerogative. The blush which had faded from her cheeks appeared on his, and he began to babble some foolish word about his unworthiness when the princess mother interrupted him in a grudging voice. "Mr. Wogan, you were to bring a written authority from the prince my husband." Wogan drew himself up straight. "Your Highness," said he, with a bow of the utmost respect, "I was given such an authority." The princess mother held out her hand. "Will you give it me?" "I said that I was given such an authority. But I have it no longer. I was attacked on my way from Ola. There were 5 men against me, all of whom desired that letter. The room was small, I could not run away, neither had I much space wherein to resist 5 men. I knew that were I killed and that letter found on me, your Highness would thereafter be too surely guarded to make escape possible, and His Highness Prince Sobieski would himself incur the Emperor's hostility. So when I had made sure that those 5 men were joined against me, I twisted that letter into a taper and before their faces lit my pipe with it." Clementina's eyes were fixed steadily and intently upon Wogan's face. When he ended she drew a deep breath, but otherwise she did not move. The princess mother, however, was unmistakably relieved. She spoke with a kindliness she had never, page 182, shown before to Wogan. She even smiled at him in a friendly way. "We do not doubt you, Mr. Wogan, but that written letter, giving my daughter leave to go, I needs must have before I let her go. A father's authority. I cannot take that upon myself." Clementina took a quick step across to her mother's side. "You did not hear," she said. "I heard indeed that Mr. Wogan had burnt the letter. But under what stress, and to spare my father and to leave me still a grain of hope. Mother, this gentleman has run great risks for me, how great I did not know, even now in this one instance we can only guess and still fall short of the mark." The princess mother visibly stiffened with maternal authority. "My child, without some sure sign the prince consents, you must not go." Clementina looked towards Wogan for assistance. Wogan put his hand into his pocket. "That sure sign I have," said he. "It is a surer sign than any written letter, for handwriting may always be counterfeit. This could never be," and he held out on the palm of his hand the turquoise snuff-box which the prince had given him on New Year's Day. "It is a jewel unique in all the world, and the prince gave it me. It is a jewel he treasured not only for its value, but its history. Yet he gave it me. It was won by the great King John of, page 183, Poland, and remains as a memorial of the most glorious day in all that warrior's glorious life, yet his son gave it me. With his own hands he put it into mine to prove to me with what confidence he trusted your Highness's daughter to my care. That confidence was written large in the letter I burnt, but I am thinking it is engraved forever upon this stone." The princess mother took the snuff-box reluctantly and turned it over and over. She was silent. Clementina answered for her. "I am ready," she said, and she pointed to a tiny bundle on a chair in which a few clothes were wrapped. "My jewels are packed in the bundle, but I can leave them behind me if needs be." Wogan lifted up the bundle and laughed. "Your Highness teaches a lesson to soldiers, for there is never a knapsack but can hold this and still have half its space to spare. The front door is unlatched. M. Chatodex is watching in the hall. And the hall's unlighted?" "Yes. Jenny should be here in a minute, and before she comes I must tell you she does not know the importance of our undertaking. She is the servant to Mrs. Misset, who attends your Highness into Italy. We did not let her into the secret. We made up a comedy in which you have your parts to play. Your Highness," and he turned to Clementina, "is a rich Austrian heiress, deeply enamored of Captain Lucius O'Toole." Page 184. "Captain Lucius O'Toole," exclaimed the mother, in horror. "My daughter enamored of a Captain Lucius O'Toole. "He is one of my 3 companions," said Wogan, imperturbably. "Moreover, he is 6'4", the most creditable lover in the world." "Well," said Clementina, with a laugh, "I am deeply enamored of the engaging Captain Lucius O'Toole." "Go on, sir." "Your parents are of a most unexampled cruelty. They will not smile upon the fascinating O'Toole, but have locked you up on bread and water until you shall agree to marry a wealthy but decrepit gentleman of 83. "I will not," cried Clementina. "I will starve myself to death first. I will marry my 6'4" or no other man in Christendom." "Clementina," cried her mother, deprecatingly. "But at this moment," continued Wogan, "there very properly appears the fairy godmother in the person of a romantical maiden aunt." "Oh," said Clementina, "I have a romantical maiden aunt." "Yes," said Wogan, and turning with a bow to the princess mother, "Your Highness." "Aye," she exclaimed, starting up in her chair. "Your Highness has written an encouraging letter to Captain O'Toole," resumed Wogan. The princess mother gasped, "A letter to Captain O'Toole," and she flung up her hands and fell back in her chair.